Welcome to the LTC Lost Traveler Club Peregrine DadCast. We're here every week with a different constellation of amazing peregrine dads who are courageously stepping into the box and sharing from the heart what our journey is, how we navigate post-trauma, and get on with our lives. And I'm Henry Cameron Allen. I'm the founder of the Lost Travelers Club, which is not a healing organization. It is an organization to bring parents together, surviving parents, men and women, and siblings and grandparents, people who are navigating after outliving a child. And how do we come together and be active in our grief? How do we move forward? No matter how much time has passed, no matter how old our child was. I just had a woman reach out saying, asking me if the Lost Travelers Club is only for peregrines who have lost a child in childhood versus adulthood. And I said, this is for everybody. Your child is your child, no matter how old they were when they transitioned. And so we have peregrines like Jeff and yourself, John. Welcome, both of you again. Who had adult children transition and move on to the next world. And mine was 13 when he passed. He was 11 at diagnosis from brain cancer. And I've had a rough week, I'm going to be honest. Just past the 15-year milestone since he transitioned, and I never quite know how it's going to hit me. I've gotten used to my body protecting me by putting me into a state of sleep paralysis, which means that I'm fully lucid and awake in my dream state, and I cannot break out of it. I can't open my eyes. I can't wiggle my toe. I can't do anything. You know, the first time it happened, I thought either I was dead or I was in a coma or I had had a stroke. I mean, it was frightening. But then as it happened over time, maybe 2 or 3 more times, I started to realize that it was my body's way of protecting me against real world, waking world triggers, which are harder to handle than my dreaming world triggers. And I find that the dreaming world is less dark. I find that I have more control. I have a lot of wisdom that comes to me and through me. I meet my son there often. And there's no scientist living today on the planet or in the past who can tell you that the dream state is any less real than the waking state. We just don't know is the truth. Science has not cracked that nut yet. We do not know whether this waking life is what is reality or whether it's the dream life that's reality, and maybe it's both. That's where I've come to, is that they're both very real. And so I navigate between the two as if they were real. And that helps me feel balanced in a way that I can't imagine. Well, before it started happening, I didn't feel balanced in this way. Right. So I've experienced both and I can tell the difference. Do either of you experience anything like that?
Not like that. My own situation is different. And yet, you and I both marked 15 years within the same 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah.
But my son left his body at age 41. He would have been 56 years old.
Yeah.
His presence in my life is to exhort me in 2 ways. To forgiving myself for whatever I imagined to have been my responsibility for what happened in his life, and more broadly, to forgive myself, which doesn't excuse any acts of cruelty to others, by the way. It's about forgiving myself the daily failures, if you will. It's a bad word, but to achieve the goals that I've set for myself. And the next piece that he plays a part in, my son Nathan, is to exhort me to dig deeper and reach higher at everything that I do, which is positive and a benefit to others and to myself. And that's a really good relationship because he had all that good stuff going for him. If I could have only extracted the alcoholism, but then again, can't do that. And you can't change that what has happened, but you can change what happens next by what you do now.
And that
So
wasn't your fault either. I think we all feel a degree of guilt. I haven't met one peregrine, male or female, father or mother, or anywhere in between, that has felt free of the I should have, I would have, I could have in hindsight. What
I
about you?
last
Yeah.
asked John about, I mean, his kid is this great guy who's a motorcyclist and killed by an idiot.
Yeah. Yeah. a, a, a gentleman pulled out from a stop sign and, killed him automatic, and I was living in Erie, Pennsylvania at the time. I lived in a group home for head injured residents because I had a head injury back in 1992 before I got married. And I spent 13 years up there, and Adam and his mother would come up once a weekend, once a Saturday of the month. And I raised him until he was 7 years old. I was a stay-at-home dad with him. And then I found a program up in Erie, which would help me out. And it did help me out. But I only got to see my son. I only got to see Adam once a week or once a month on a Saturday. And boy, did I love every single minute of being with him and showing him all around Erie and the lighthouse and Lake Erie and all the ships and boats and, and the beaches we went to. And, it was just a grateful thing. And, my mom and my brother came up that day. And I don't know if I said this before, but my brother handed me, I was kind of shocked to see them. And I was like, oh, hi, Ma. Hi, Tom. And before I had a chance to say, like, what are you doing here? My brother walked over because it was like around 5, it was around 7 o'clock at night. And I was laying on my bed and he says, here, John. And he handed me rosary beads, because I'm Catholic. And as soon as he handed me the rosary beads, he told me that Adam passed. And it was so different for me, and I felt like I was numb, which I felt like I was numb, like, whoa, 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 whoa. How can you tell me this? Uh, the boy's only 20 years old and he was at University of Pittsburgh in mechanical engineering. And he had he went to Italy twice and he had a lot of things going on for him.
Yeah.
And apparently he positioned into another world, I guess. And so I pray for him every day. And then I left and I went home the next day to my ex-wife's house because we had gotten a divorce, but we're friends as heck, and her family and I family are friends and everything. But now we're living without Adam, and I grieve, and it's normal to grieve like that when you lost a loved one. And some days it turns on, and some days it turns off. And when I go to church, it turns off because I pray. You know what I mean? And during my day, I get up in the morning, I pray, and I go to bed and I pray. And I thank God that I had Adam in my life for 20 years. And my father said to me before he passed, 2 months after Adam, he said, John, what if God only wanted you to have Adam for only 20 years? Would you still accept him? And I says, heck yeah, Dad, I'd love to have Adam just for 20 years. And he said that to me, and I said that to my wife, and she appreciated that my dad said to me.
That was a
if that makes sense.
Yeah,
I don't.
absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, I just, just going day by day. And another thing, I haven't had any dreams about Adam yet. And a friend of mine who lost her son with drugs a year before Adam, I graduated high school with her, and she lives down the street. And I
Mhm.
talk to her every now and then. And she says, put a picture of Adam underneath your pillow when you go to bed. Maybe you'll have like a good dream about Adam and stuff. And I did that for a few nights, and I still haven't had a dream about him. And I didn't ask my ex-wife if she ever had dreams about him, but she's a my ex-wife's a very smart girl, and she wrote a book about Adam and his motorcycle, and with like all his friends and stuff. And
Mhm.
it's a good book. And I read half of it, and then I had to put it down because it sort of got to my soul.
Yeah.
And I didn't pick it up yet to finish it. And someday I will, someday soon, someday not so soon. I don't know when it's going to be, but it will be in that time.
John,
Oh,
you're a natural. Thank you for that. Very nicely said.
You're
beautiful.
so welcome, gentlemen.
Very wise too. It is a day by day thing. We all know that. And
Mm,
it's really hard to see, one of the things that we were talking about earlier before we started recording was how everyone's grief journey, even though there are common factors that we can identify, right, that allow for this fraternity, this understanding of the experience of grief, everyone goes through it in a very unique way as well.
yeah,
And we
yeah,
all have different things going on in our own lives, right? John, you're dealing with a head injury on top of
right.
everything else that affects your memory, that affects the rhythm of
Mm,
the day, sometimes
right.
deeply, I'm sure, and your relationships with family and friends.
Yeah, my mother takes real good care of me because I live with her and my brother, and she knows, and I mean, she helps me out, and I help her out too.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah.
a matter of at this house we're like a therapy house too together, and it's wonderful though, because I love my mom so much and my family, and it's 100% great to me. Yeah.
Grief has a way of smashing through defenses that we were taught to have as children and then that society imposed on us. And when I say defenses, I mean things that keep others away.
Hmm.
Grief will
Yeah.
smash everything and will force all in one form or another to open up to others.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that turns out to be a blessing, not the initial trauma. I'm not suggesting that a horrific loss of life of a child is ever a blessing, but what happens after that is a really fascinating, to me anyway, continuum of change and challenge and pain. And then one day, unpredictably, you cannot say, well, exactly 90 days forward, the following will happen now. But have faith as things evolve for you as an individual person going through this terrible trauma. Doors open, relief enters, and gradually
Yeah.
joy follows. Joy. Let's hang on there.
That's wonderful you said that. And I agree with you 100%. And it's very nice to hear that, actually, you know?
Well, I think that's why this podcast is so important, because for the three of us to sit here and acknowledge that joy is possible, that
Hmm.
blessings are possible, that forward momentum is possible out of the numbness. I in one of my paralyzed states, I had this vision complete come to me about the dimensions of grief that are universal. It's not just about our children. It could be a parent, it could be a friend, it could be a partner, it could be our youth, it could be our hair, except for John. It could be any kind of grieving that we experience, that there are different dimensions that we go through. And I'm working on a series right now called Quantum Grief, because it is, when we think of quantum physics, right, it means unpredictability. And yet we can identify different stages, right? There's 0 dimension, which can be equated to the Big Bang, right?
Wow.
We understand as the first moment of explosion, where the whole universe as we understand it now changed and created who we are, what we are, how we are, right? So the Big Bang to me is that moment of transition where somebody hands us the rosary beads. That was your Big Bang, John.
It
Right?
was.
When you got the word, you know, Jeff, of your son, and you know, when I got word, I mean, that's the Big Bang. That changes everything. It changes who you are forever.
Yeah.
And so that's the first phase. And it's numbness. You said it, John. It's this numbness that you just you can't relate to anything or anyone around you. You're still in shock, right? That's that first period of mourning that we all experience, no matter if our child's passing was expected. As in my case, we knew it was going to happen. We didn't know what day or what moment or what hour, but this, you know, we knew it was coming. We just didn't know when. And, you know, or there's the moment that you absolutely don't expect, and as you both have experienced. And then there's sort of this period of time in that dimension 0 where we're just unable to feel anything, right? And then we cross into dimension 1 of mourning, which is where things start to coalesce a little bit. We're still numb, but we're starting to get a sense of what happened and our relationship to it. We go through the feelings of guilt. What could I have done differently to prevent what happened, right? And we move through that, and eventually we'll come to this very thin membrane between mourning, which is a temporary and passive state, into active grieving, which is permanent. We're going to grieve forever. Like you said, John, we're going to have days where it feels like we're doing okay, right? Whether we're in church and we're praying, or we're taking a walk in the woods, or we're doing yoga, or we're meditating, whatever it is, right? We're working, you know, and we're finding our rhythm again. That's the third dimension, right? Dimensional means it has depth finally. It has height and depth, and we can start to relate to other people again. We start to understand we're not the only ones going through this journey. Our parents, right? We don't talk much about grief and grandparents and how they handle it. They're too busy holding us, right, through our grief. And then there's siblings as well. How are they held in their grief journey, right? And so the third dimension is where we start to understand all the different nuances and varieties of styles of grieving. And then it goes on and on and on from there. But I think I'm on to something.
Yeah. Henry Cameron,
Trying to make sense of it. Still, after 15 years, every day, trying to make sense of it.
I have this notion that it's a custom-made process, made for us by the universe, by God, by the angels, by the saints, by whatever is external to us, but fundamentally inside of us, to teach us what happens next, and to encourage us to grow and change and rise to meet what life then offers us. I find myself with more empathy since my son transitioned, since Nathan went up the story balcony to his death in Chicago, chasing his shot glass. Yeah, my empathy has increased. Also, however, so has my sense of self-protection.
Mm.
I'm much more conscious about the persons to whom I fully open myself, less cavalier, more humble. God knows I need it, so I get it.
Yeah,
That's good.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, last Thursday, not the Thursday it passed, but the other Thursday, uh, unfortunately, I had a breakdown and I had to go to the crisis center. My mom took me
Mm.
just because my PCP gave me a little identification card and it had the crisis phone number on there. And I went and I talked to a psychiatrist. No. I talked to a counselor, and she, went over some information about me, and she gave me a list of psychiatrists to call. And I've been calling them all week, and uh, a lot of them don't accept my insurance. But then there's a lot that uh, you pay for and stuff. And I found out the prices of them, and I'm debating whether or not to do that or to see a counselor instead. So my mind's not made up yet, but I believe I'm going to go see and talk to somebody about this, like a psychiatrist, and
So
you know,
proud.
with you guys too, and the one on Saturday. It blesses me to know that I have this in my life, and it makes me very, very happy coming home from church and meeting with you guys, and it brightens my week up. Truly, 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 and I'm happy about that.
Yeah, I think you can know with certainty that somewhere down the line, this week, this month, this year, over the next 10 years, somebody's going to click on this particular podcast, will connect up with you, and you will have changed their lives.
Wow.
Know that.
Wow. That's important to know.
Your open-hearted, pure declarations about what your life has been like, what you've been through, and
Hmm.
through your presence here, showing how you have risen from the flames of that loss and continue to go through the process of grieving. I think that's a real enabler of strength in people who have just recently gone through the terrible trauma of the loss.
And you know what? I would be grateful for someone to do that for me, because I have uh, a lot of wisdom to show people and to talk to people and to know other people online that uh, lost young ones and things. And it's a blessing to share and and to realize and to listen too, because that's important in your life too, and to think and everything. So, you know, I can just do my best, and support too is very important. So,
If you're doing your best, nobody can expect more, not even you,
okay,
right?
yeah, right, right.
And John, I'm glad you opened that door because it's a very courageous thing. I'm so proud of you, brother.
Oh, thanks.
Because there's such a stigma with mental health and men, especially in America, but it's global. And for
Mhm.
you to sit here and publicly testify that you are seeking help, that you're not going to go through your breakdown alone, but you're going to head toward a breakthrough by reaching out and not let the limitations of insurance and cost. And do you know what the miracle of all this is? The
Tell me.
miracle of all this is that there are people like me who recently I got my diploma and my international certification as a grief and bereavement counselor.
Very
And
good.
And through the Lost Travelers Club, I can offer that as a service to you for nothing.
Wow, that is
Say,
truly, brother.
to say that I can be here for you in that capacity. I'm qualified, and that's for anyone who's witnessing this. And the way that, and I'm doing it fully volunteer, because I think it's important that there's somewhere to turn in
Mm,
spite of insurance limitations, in spite of cost. If someone has the capacity to pay for a service, they can make a donation to the Lost Travelers Club and make it available to even more people.
Yeah.
Right. That's why I built the model this way, so that it keeps perpetually giving to people who need it. So I'm putting that out on the table for you. I'm happy to be that for you. And for anyone else who's going through a crisis. And even though those crises, they come and go, right? Just to know that there's what I call myself in that capacity as a guy wire. And that's a construction term. We've all seen a guy wire when we pass by a construction site, right? We see a wall or a pole or something, and it's got those tense wires, those stabilizing wires attached to it, lending stability to a freestanding structure until it can stand on its own. So I'm here to lend stability during unstable times.
Wow, that's important to know. Yeah. Thank you for letting me know that again. And I appreciate all the wisdom you've been giving me.
Anytime. Let's set up a regular time to meet.
Okay, good.
Because you need it right now.
Yeah.
And John, he means privately, you know. He doesn't mean out here on the podcast, on the DadCast.
That's right. Yes, we'll do it privately.
We did it once before, though. We did
We did.
Oh, yeah, that was
did.
good.
So
we should do that again soon.
Gentle reminder that I'm here.
Okay, good. And I'm here too, you know.
Thank you. I need it too. You know, going through these, I don't like to call them anniversaries or angelversaries or death.
Yeah.
You know, I call them milestones because they're heavy. They carry some weight and they mark time passing.
Yeah. So you call them milestones then? Yeah. I'm going to start calling them milestones too, because a lot of people say happy heavenly birthday, and my ex-wife doesn't like that at all.
I don't like it either.
Yeah. So a lot of people say that, and I don't say that at all. So milestones is a good terminology for it. So I like that.
It works for
when
me.
People fall out of their good-heartedness, they'll send me a note saying, you know, happy blessed memory day or something like that.
Yeah.
Part of me recoils inside, and then I say to myself, really, who are you to judge them? Just say thank you and just make believe that you're another human being instead of some fictional character that you've created. So
true. You know, I had the same reaction when people would come up to me and put their hand on my arm and say, I'm so sorry. I know exactly how you feel. I lost my parakeet 2 months ago, and it was like my child, right? At first, it's like laser beams coming out of my eyes. And, you know, I mean, all of my guards went up. And then I had to take a half step back, like you're saying, Jeff, and say, they are trying to empathize with me. They are reaching out in comfort. They are doing the best they can with what they've got, and bless them for that. And so I have a different perspective on that. I catch myself when the guards start to go up. I heard somebody refer to, actually it was the passing of their mother recently, as her Freedom Day. And that was kind of cool. I kind of liked that because Cameron was the age that he was 13, right? Which, of course, on first thought, it's like, oh, his life was cut off so young. He didn't get to, you know, experience so many of the wonderful things of life that we experience as adults. But I have to be honest, I was sitting there in that first part of my grief journey thinking, he got to pass go, collect his $200. He didn't have to go through heartbreak over broken relationships. He didn't have to deal with that first a-hole boss, you know, or that crappy job in fast food or whatever, you know, the crappy job was. He didn't have to go through being fired. He didn't have to go through high school, which was a nightmare for a lot of us, right? So he got to surpass all that and find utter and complete freedom. And so if there is a lightness that I have found, even after 15 years, just to hear someone refer to the day of someone's passing as their freedom day, that was powerful, and it kind of counterbalanced the heaviness of the milestone.
Wow.
Still a heaviness is that needs to be acknowledged, but it also brought a little bit of balance in recognizing that they're not suffering the way we're suffering, those of us that are left behind. They're not dealing with COVID. They're not dealing with, wars in the world. They're not dealing with human trafficking and debt, right? And all those challenges that we have as human beings that are here, physical. And so there is a balance to be found, isn't there?
There's this really interesting, at least to me, subset of yoga philosophy that teaches that each soul chooses the family in which it manifests and is born into.
Right.
And that each soul proceeds along a path of experience that it requires for its long journey of multiple generations. That in and just sitting with it for a while was also challenging and relieving.
Yeah, it's both.
Yeah, I agree.
It's both in the same moment, right? And that's the confounding part of this journey too, that makes us feel a little bit schizophrenic sometimes, right? Because that carries a certain guilt. How can I feel positive about my child leaving the planet? How can there be anything? This is why I was kicked out of Compassionate Friends. They were very compassionate to me, but I was right. Listen, bless them for the good that they do, because they're there for people who are in bereavement, who are bereft, right? But if you bring something, a positive perspective to the table when people are in the depths of their mourning, maybe it was inappropriate of me to be insensitive to that part of the journey, which I was at that time. I was still in mourning. I was still dealing with it, but I was finding what you were talking about, Jeff, the blessings in the loss, the gifts in the loss. When I was 8 years old, I don't know if I've told this story before, but I'm going to tell it again.
Sure, good. Let's hear it.
I was in second grade, just 8, right? And I was attending the international school in Vienna, Austria. And my second grade teacher, whose name was Mrs. Fend, which I love to this day, because it's like, fend for yourself, kid, it's like a character out of Charles Dickens. She gave us a homework assignment, and it was to write about our greatest fear. And I remember at 8 years old, sitting at my desk, looking at an empty sheet of paper, thinking, why would a grown-up ask a child to meditate on fear? Why is that a thing? But I had to do the assignment. And the only thing that came to me, because I wasn't a fearful kid. I wasn't afraid of the dark. I wasn't afraid of being abducted. I wasn't afraid of a monster under my bed or bugs or snakes or anything. And the only thing that came to me, I swear to God, was outliving my children. Call it a premonition. That ties into, Jeff, what you were saying, that we choose the path before we come into the physical. But there's something about this where I knew at 8 years old that was something that I was going to have to face at some point in the future.
What was Mrs. Fenn's response to your paper?
I don't remember, but my dad kept everything. He was one of those dads that kept every homework assignment, every test, every report card. And when I was I guess I must have been in my 40s, he was cleaning out some junk. He was moving from Brazil back to the States. And he sent me this packet, this manila envelope full of all my papers from childhood. And it was like a trip down memory lane. Most of it I didn't remember doing, but that one stood out to me. And it was like an angel choir came up out of the floor. Oh! And I was reading this paper in my own handwriting as a child. And I recognized the gift of being able to walk this world, this time in the world's history fearlessly. I had faced that fear and I had moved and survived it. I had moved beyond it. And anyone in psychology will tell you that you have to face your fears in order to move through them and beyond them. And the gift in the loss, I'm using that word, Jeff, the gift in the loss is that it created the space for me to walk fearlessly in a very fearsome world for a lot of people, and allowed me to be a counselor to help other people, because I've been through it. A lot of counselors, a lot of psychiatrists, psychologists, through all the best intentions, have nothing in their toolkit to help us who have been through this kind of a grief journey. Unless they've been through it themselves. That's why I got my diploma. That's why I went and said, I can't find it anywhere. Somebody who can really help me because they've walked the path. Well, I've walked the path and I'm walking the path. I've faced the fear. I've identified the fear. I've moved through the fear that every parent has, right? And that gives me a little bit of a leg up to be a helper during a very difficult time in history.
There's this nautical thing called a pilot. People have forgotten about this, but you still have to take on a pilot, a local expert in the local waterways to navigate the berthing of your big ship after you brought it in from the blue ocean. But you can't be a pilot unless you've been there over and over and over again, mostly starting off as a preteen in a sailboat or a canoe, and then you graduate to a motorboat and ultimately to bigger and bigger ships if you really have talent for it, so that no matter what the weather conditions are, no matter what the language of the master of the ship is, you can guide it safely to its birth. And you can't do that in some psychiatric universes with any degree of palpable depth unless you survived it yourself, which is why you're effective, Henry Cameron. That's why you're effective.
I hope so. I hope I am. And I've had very good relationships, dynamics with clients because of that, because it's a unique kind of care. Who has walked, someone who's been a pilot and you know, been down that journey, and we all have that capacity, but how do we articulate it? Where are we on the path? Right? I think I'm better for having been through it for the last 15 years plus. You know, just like I'm a better director in theater for having been an actor first, a trained actor, right? I studied at a conservatory for acting, and I don't act anymore, but I'm a director. And it's a very similar thing. These are great analogies for, you know, seeking out expertise, seeking out someone who has reached a level of proficiency in a certain skill. Let's face it, grieving is a universal life skill. Every single human being, 8 point whatever billion of us on the planet, are going to experience a grieving process.
What if that were taught early on, say in middle school?
Right.
Yeah.
Elementary school. It should start early, I think. Not, you know, in an age appropriate way.
Sure.
Just like aging well should be taught from an early age.
Right. John or Jane, their pet bunny stopped playing with them yesterday. What's that called? What does it mean? How do they feel? How do we get them through it?
Right. You know how my death and grieving lesson was? Flushing my goldfish. that flushing it down the toilet. That was my lesson. How many hands up if that was your tantamount to your grieving lesson, right?
Yeah.
I think we go through the passing, the expected passings of, our great grandparents or our grandparents. I was fortunate enough to have known intimately all of my grandparents and most of my great grandparents and a great great grandfather, right? But
Right.
the conversation was never there to say what it means, how it feels, right? I don't recall ever losing a friend to death of my own age. I don't recall ever knowing anyone consciously who had experienced parental grief
Yeah.
growing up.
Plus, our Western culture, I think in general, though not with specifics, tends to guide us toward quickest analgesic possible. How do I avert additional pain from the first moment that somebody tells me that they have lost someone? Okay, how do I get away from that? How do I make believe that I'm really present for them? Oh, I'm really so sorry. Where's the door?
Mm.
How do
I
I share that pain? Because I don't really want to share in that pain. I think that's a very common experience that people don't talk about. How do I?
what I'd like to for next week, because we're wrapping up. I can't believe it's already been almost an hour.
Wow.
But what I'd like to address at some point, whether it's next week or beyond, in the DadCast, is ghosting. People leaving your circle after you've experienced surviving the loss of your child.
Because they can't cope with it.
Because they can't cope with their own grief and they can't cope with your grief, right?
Yeah.
Especially around a child. My son had a warm and loving circle of friends, community, schoolmates, all of that. They were left to their own journeys.
Yeah.
And with what kind of support? We don't know. I started a Facebook group called Cameron's Place for even today, even 15 years on, a place for his mates and his community to come together in honor of him. It's not very active. I mean, there are people there. I'll post pictures of him. I'll celebrate his birthday. I'll celebrate, which I call Cameron's Feast. It's now a holiday. Because he was a saint, this kid. I mean, really, he was. And so he deserves a feast and he loved to eat.
Here's his miracle.
Yeah.
This aspect of your being, and you're extending your empathy to the whole planet. That's his gift.
Yeah. My wife, what she did is put a scholarship foundation out for his high school. I think it was it was the 1st of September. It was a Friday, and it was at a movie theater. The movie theater is owned by this it's called Yoakmont Bakery. It's a real delicious bakery here in Pittsburgh, and they owned it. And Adam worked there for a month, and he got to know the managers and the people there. But we had this scholarship foundation. It was his second scholarship foundation, and what the students do is write a paper about what they're going to be doing through their college sessions and all what they do. But then they see a movie at this. A band plays at this movie theater, and it lasts about 3 hours. And my ex-wife made a video of all Adam growing up from a little kid all the way to 20 years old, and and they watched a little movie. The movie's like a half an hour or 45 minutes, and then it goes into a little get together with a bunch of his friends and there's I'd say about 3/4 of the people there that I didn't even know,
Wow.
So, and a lot of his friends I did get to meet and talk to the first meeting. So, and then I go over to my ex-wife's house, and her friends come over there pretty often. Adam's friends come over there often too. So I don't want to hold up the time. So
what a great thing that they get to meet him through you.
Yeah.
through his mom, because there are things that we can do, introduce our kids to the world at their best, the way we
Yeah.
knew them, only knew,
Right.
you know. That's how the Lost Travelers Club came about. We have a project that we're working on right now that was Cameron's vision, called Brain Candy Magazine, an arts and literature magazine to be written by and for kids who are living with critical illness or terminal illnesses, as a way to bridge
Right.
in their isolation. And in turn, that helps the parents who are going through it as well. And we're working on that right now. I have an intern who's editing, and it's thrilling that this is manifesting in Cameron's honor, right? You have scholarship. There are ways that we can be active in our grief. That's what the Fellowship of Fathers is about. We're doing these things individually. Can you imagine the good that we could create in the world by coming together and channeling our grief into goodness as a group, as a fellowship? That's the vision.
Yeah. And we think of it as keeping his life still alive.
Yeah.
You know what? With all his friends and people that didn't know him, but have faith in the family, and, you know, just go for a good time out, you know, like a spiritual time out. And, you know, it's very enjoyable and, you know, peaceful.
Well, it's Adam's blessing that continues beyond his being in the physical. He continues to bless you, the rest of the family, and his ever expanding circle. And that is him acting through you.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. That is very, very good.
Our kids live on. They live in our hearts. They live in our hearts. You know, the great poet Rumi, I've said this before, says that your cracks are where the light gets in. I disagree. I think it's where our inner light, which is our kids, gets back out into the world. Our cracks, our brokenness through our grief is where our kids come out into the world. We hear them in our laughter. We see them in these events. We see them in the good that we do in the world, in memory of them, in honor of them. And they're working with us. They're working through us. There's hope in that. There's hope in that. And I hope everyone listening hears that. And if you want to know more, if you want to get involved in the Fellowship of Fathers with the Lost Travelers Club, go to losttravelers.club. We are also in the process of forming a mamaship circle. We have our fellowship circle for dads. We have our mamaship circle for moms. We're forming that now. And so if you have, or if you know someone who is going through this feeling of being lost in the world, a lost traveler who can benefit from this kind of community, join us. Join the club. Jeff's always saying it's a club nobody wants to belong to, but guess what? We're here. Might as well have a club.
Yeah.
And let yourself enjoy it, because those kids who we have lost, I know with certainty, each one of them wants us to find our joy and to manifest that joy in service to others.
Thank you, gentlemen. It's been another great DadCast. Join us next week, and the journey continues. See you.
All right, guys. See you later.
Take care.
You too, buddy. You too, Cameron, and your Cameron.